Well, I mean, if you want any evidence of anabolics making you look older as just look at my face.
Dave's actually 32, guys. Dave's 32 years old. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally, and we are joined by special guest Tanner Tattered. Tanner, thanks for joining us, man.
Good to be on, fellas.
Yeah, great to have you here. And guys, we are brought to you by evalbloodanalysis.com. You can get your lab work done by Dave if you're in the UK. He'll come to your house. He'll do it himself. Just give him a call. He'll be there. He doesn't care how far away you live. He's going to go to your house. He's going to do it. He'll do it right after the show, as a matter of fact. Actually, go to evalbloodanalysis.com. You can sign up over there. And truenutrition.com. Thank you, everybody who has been helping to support the show through True Nutrition. They have great products, great prices. Use our code THINK. Last but not least, I also want to mention supplementsource.ca for Canadians. And thank you to everybody from Patreon. We've got some Patreon questions today. So, Dave, I'm going to need you to actually put forth a little effort here today because we do have a guest.
Okay. You forgot to mention that you're offering free coaching for the first 100 people that apply.
Oh, we had our contest to talk about.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
We had a lot of people enter our contest. So, Tanner, we started what are we even calling it, Dave? We didn't even have a name. It was just like summer transformation.
Just call it the contest. I mean, we call it a podcast. We might as well stay with that theme.
Yeah, summer transformation contest. And we're going to do an 8-week thing. We had everybody send in their pictures. And now their job is to get in the best shape they can in 8 weeks. And then we're going to pick a top 3 and they're going to get prizes. I sent a message over to True Nutrition. So we're going to hopefully get something from them. And I'll send everybody a t-shirt. The top 3 finalists, and we're going to get somebody on to help us with the final judging. We're going to narrow it down to like the top 10, and then we'll get somebody on to help us with that. You were thinking maybe like Zach Codd might come on and help us with that.
That would be funny.
It'd be good. It'd be good. So Tanner, what's going on, man? You're a guy much like us doing PED education. We basically wanted to bring you on. Have you ever seen a TV show called Scared Straight?
Yeah.
So it's where they take like younger guys and they take them into prison systems, and they're like, hey, if you don't change your ways, this is what you're going to end up like. And so we wanted you to see firsthand, if you look at Dave and I, this is where you might end up if you don't find something else to do with your life and your time.
Oh, it's not that bad. Well, it depends. Which one am I ending up like?
If you get the kidney problems.
You definitely don't want to be this side.
Look in that cell right there. See how crowded it is?
Anyway, we're happy to have you, man. And let's talk a little bit about you. So you've been doing PED education for basically the past 2 years, is it? And what's the main platform that you're on?
Yeah, so I guess it's probably best to tackle this chronologically, where I initially started out on TikTok. And a lot of the guys in my age demographic, the TikTok scene is, they'll post some low exposure video of them training weights, some inspirational, motivational quote, and that's kind of the entirety of their content. That stuff's a dime a dozen. I looked at that scene and I felt like I could do it better than everyone else. And I started looking in comments and seeing the general education baseline of TikTok viewers. And I realized that there was a ton of misconceptions and very low hanging fruit. Stuff like completely confusing what testosterone even does in the human body. Like, oh, I can just use a nasal spray of testosterone, like crazy misconceptions.
Yeah.
And so the first video I made was, you're not going to look like Chris Bumstead after your first cycle. And apparently that was a controversial take.
Oh yeah, I bet.
So got lots of views there, and then kind of realized that it was actually sustainable, where I could start showing guys that there's a ton of myths that young people think, or they've been conditioned to think because of whoever they're watching, and start leading them into the better resources for research in this space.
That's what I've appreciated about you. What were you going to say, Dave? Did you say something?
I was shocked that one cycle wouldn't make me look like Chris Bumstead. I'm gutted now.
You got to work a little harder than that. Maybe for you, Dave, maybe 2. Like a good
I
bulker
did cardio
and then a
this
cut.
morning. So.
Did you?
Yeah.
So you started doing that though, Tanner, a while back, and where are you at with it today? Like, what's your Where would you say you get the best engagement nowadays?
Yeah, so TikTok unfortunately doesn't let me get engagement anymore. There was a tipping point at which my account started getting banned. And I just decided to persevere and keep making new accounts. Like, okay, let's see what happens here. Could never really crack 5,000. I would be good for, say, a couple days, a week, get to a couple thousand, get banned again. And at a certain point, I just decided to take my efforts elsewhere. And they've been well respected on Instagram, thankfully.
Nice.
I've never had any issues there, no violations, nothing at all. And that's been really good for me. So creeping up now, I think we hit 125,000 followers today. It's good stuff.
Oh, yeah. What about your personal bodybuilding? Where does your passion lie? Is it in the PED stuff at this point?
Yeah. So I've always loved, like, the way I got into working out. I saw my roommate sitting in my living room in college, some hulking black guy on the TV screen, little purple mankini. And my immediate thought was, what do I have to do to look like that? Yeah. Now, in retrospect, that's Ronnie Coleman at one of his Olympia showings. And God knows why I had that reaction to seeing that for the first time, but I immediately started working out. I immediately started researching any supplement I could get my hands on. And at that time, PEDs were a little bit easier to find information on.
Yeah.
And then so leaning into all the content creator stuff like that. So my goal and my love has always been for bodybuilding. I can be real with myself and say, I don't have the genetics to be Ronnie Coleman, but I still love doing this stuff day in, day out. And I'd love to see how far I can push it, whether that is, say, a regional show at best or something even better. We'll see.
Hell yeah. Yeah. It's just, the point too is just like, as long as you love it and you're staying healthy in the process, wherever you take it, the thing I love about bodybuilding is it allows you to push to be your best. So for me, the Michigan State Championship might be my version of the Olympia, but I can still get the personal satisfaction out of like doing my best, making sure that I've overturned every stone, making sure that I've been on plan the whole time and really giving all my effort. It can be really rewarding, and I'm glad to hear that, because I feel like a lot of younger people today are just focused on like getting the pro card. I got to turn pro, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the pro card's a big demographic thing. I mean, it's an epidemic. I think when you look at it from, someone who wants to maybe go into the open division, then you have an idea of the pro card can take a long time. Like, it can take 12 years for a lot of guys to even get close to a pro card. Even my coach, Elliot Dermond, and he's huge. He's an absolute monster, but still no pro card. So it's a thankless sport in the bigger leagues. Whereas, like, if someone just wanted a cardboard square, they could probably do men's physique or classic and get that a lot faster.
Yeah.
The other problem is that you get your pro card, then what?
Yeah.
Because you're starting again, and it's a whole different world at that level. And so many people think that a pro card is going to open all these doors, and the reality is they just end up paying the IFBB a shitload of money every year to not really do anything. Now, if it's good for business from a coaching point of view and that side of thing, I see the merit.
Yeah. But
you've got to be realistic. There's one thing turning pro. There's a whole nother thing being competitive as a pro.
Yeah.
And that is a different world. And from the point you turn pro to you start bringing in prize money, and bear in mind, if you're not crapping in the top 5, you're not even pulling enough money out of the show to cover what it costs you to do the show.
Yeah.
It's a big reality check for a lot of people. They hit that pro card and think that the sun's going to shine and the heaven's going to open, and all of a sudden it's like, actually, I'm probably further down the pecking order than I was when I was an amateur, because at least as an amateur I was top of the tree.
All the more reason to be monetizing outside of the pro card and outside of the pro wins.
Absolutely. I just was thinking,
there's a whole business side, isn't there, on top of that?
Yeah. And I was just thinking too, with what Tanner does, my brain went like 100 miles an hour down the road and back to what we had been talking about with basically educating younger people. Dave, I feel like one of the things Tanner has on his side is, I think that some of the younger people might be more willing to listen to him than to us, because if you and I come on and we're like, no, that's not how you do it, you got to do it this way, there's this element I get sometimes from people that maybe are less educated. They almost feel like the educators are gatekeeping. Like, we're telling them, like, don't use as much gear. And they're like, well, you know, I know that every pro is using, 10 grams and all that. And there are guys using that much. Or we tell them, like, hey, maybe don't use SARMs. Maybe start out with, something else, that kind of thing. Whereas I feel like if they listen to Tanner, they're more likely to be like, hey, this is a guy I can relate to better,
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems with this industry, with the PAD and training, both sides of it, is that people equate the individual's appearance to not.
Yeah.
So if I was still sitting at 365, people would automatically think I had more knowledge and would automatically have my what I put out there would have much more gravity.
Yeah.
I've done training content. I've changed a lot of my content recently due to a new social girl, and it's going well. But there's a huge backlash because of how I look. Yeah.
Okay.
The amount of comments. I mean, it's good from an engagement point of view because it actually gets you more engagement. So actually, the negativity is quite good from that point of view. But yeah, the amount of people that said I wouldn't listen to this fat git and similar phrases. Because look at state of him. If he can't action his own knowledge, then what's the point? And I don't have issue with that in a sense. I don't find it insulting or anything of that nature. But the reality is, your visual impact plays a big role in how people relate to you. So, why would a 22-year-old necessarily listen to me because I'm 53 and because I'm fat? Or to you because you're older as well, Scott, where someone like Tanner, they'll be perfectly relatable to because where they are, they understand you, understand them straight away from a visual point of view. There's an immediate connection before you even give them any content.
Yeah. I think so.
It's actually something that I talked about in depth with Vigorous Steve when I was on the podcast with him, where there's that essence of, you can imagine being a teenager, right? And your mom or your dad or some higher up at school is telling you, oh, don't do this. Your immediate reaction is buzz off, old man. You don't know anything about me. Like, what do you understand about my lifestyle or what I want to do or whatever? But then if there's that kid that's like a couple years older than you, like kind of seems cool to you, you kind of look up to him, and he gives you some advice, now you take it as gospel. Even if it's the same thing that your parents were saying, you don't want to hear it from them. You want to hear it from the cool kid or whoever that person is. So it's been really nice to be a mouthpiece for the older guys or the guys who are a little bit more experienced than me, to basically spread the same message. A lot of the times, because I'm doing short form content, I'll take their YouTube videos or their long form content, kind of break them down to make them as accessible as possible for younger guys who maybe don't have fully developed brains, and help them understand the same core concept that these guys are saying, but in a way where they're like, yeah, this guy actually is looking out for me. He kind of gets what it's like to be a little reckless, to want to push things around a little bit, but also he's trying to keep me alive.
Yeah, I think that's cool, man. I think that's really cool. What are some of the repeating themes you get? Because Dave and I, we get the same questions all the time. I can't tell you how many times we've answered like just basic trend questions. Dave, can you count how many times we've answered a trend question, like a basic trend question?
It's one of the problems I have with producing content, because I think this is so basic, this is so simple, why am I putting this shit out? But actually, that's the stuff, as you've already said earlier on, that's what gets the traction.
Yeah, and there's always going to be new people coming in that are going to need to know that, and maybe they hadn't watched all your old stuff, Sometimes that stuff gets lost, in the history of the algorithm. So, but yeah, Tanner, like, what are some of the common repeating themes that you see with a younger demographic?
So it's funny that you guys talk about how frequently you get certain questions, because I learned that pretty early on. And the first thing I did was I made a Google Doc and I called it my FAQ. And anytime I would get a question, I would say, read my FAQ. And a lot of guys would start to, they feel like that's like my running joke now. So sometimes I'll see my followers looking at other stupid questions that get asked me. Well, let's not call them stupid questions, but they're frequent questions. Yeah. And I'll see my followers telling them for me, go read his FAQ. The answer is already in my FAQ. So I build this little support network where hopefully everyone's helping each other out and saying like, look, man, this horse has been beaten to death. You don't need to make this guy tell you the trend first cycle is a bad idea for the 300th time. Go read the FAQ. It's kind of already in there. So I've loved that system so far, but there's still some questions that I get. and they're a little bit more in depth and not something I could like answer for every individual person.
Okay.
The first one is, and it's because of my younger demographic, is when can I get on gear? Like, when can I hop on? All of these guys are on social media. All the people they look up to, or at least a good chunk of them, they're enhanced in some way or another to varying degrees. Are they extremely enhanced? Are they like mildly enhanced? Are they just on TRT? What does that look like? And then for the person asking the question, what does their body look like? Is their body even equipped to handle any level of enhancements? And the way I approach the question is it's really just a game of knowledge and acceptance of the risk. So if you have those two things, I think that there's a lot of room for you to proceed. But if you have the knowledge that, hey, I'm 15 years old and the risks of getting on at 15 years old is X, Y, and Z, yeah, it's probably a bad idea. And if you had the knowledge, you should not do it. I think a lot of people are just, hard-headed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think all of us, I don't care how old you are, we always want to kind of like, hey, if there's a faster way, then doesn't it just make sense to go with that? I learned early on, like my dad and mom were both into bodybuilding, and they had a community that was into bodybuilding and powerlifting. And I learned early on that, like, hey, you don't mess around with steroids when you're a kid. I heard all the stuff. You've got plenty of your own natural tests and blah, blah, blah. You got to build a foundation. And so I really believed in that. I'm really glad that I work with a handful of younger guys that are still natural, and that's what they're doing. They're trying to build a foundation. That said, I know a lot of guys do hop on at a younger age. When did you start your first cycle, Tanner?
I was 23.
Okay, so that's not super young, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not super young. Dave, how old were you when you started?
19. And I think, if we're talking ideals, I would say 23, 24 is your sort of ideal start point. But the reality is, when you're 18, 19, that's probably when the desire and the drive is going to be at its greatest to get on. I think younger than that, we know it's not a good idea, but at the end of the day, I think there's still a bit of a fear element there when people are 15, 16, 17. They're probably naturally just still a bit more cautious.
Yeah.
But when you start getting 18, 19, you're out in the world working, you're starting to be independent of everything. I think that's where the greatest sort of pinch point is for people really starting to seriously consider going on anabolics.
Yeah, fair enough. What else have you heard, Tanner?
I was commenting on what Dave's saying is it's especially difficult when you see guys like I know just recently the Dubai Pro, there was a 21-year-old who placed second place in the 212, and that's already a serious pro show. Yeah. So insane that they could even achieve that. And this is at an age that's before Dave is recommending anyone get on gear. So there's that added question of, well, what if I want to look like that at 21? Okay, well, there's a lot of layers to that. What does this kid's blood work look like? What is his lifespan expectancy? If we get some abdominal ultrasounds done in the next 10 years, it's going to be drastically different. Also, neurologically, I think that's probably the biggest concern.
Yeah, neurologically, you're not fully functioning till you're 24. It's one of the reasons why the drink age limit in the States is 21, because of the alcohol effect on brain developmental. I don't think there's ever a right answer, because at the end of the day, it's down to the individual. But my big caveat with all this is, it's down to you, but you take responsibility. Do not turn around in 10 years' time and go, drugs fucked me up, because drugs didn't fuck you up, you did.
Yep.
Drugs didn't walk down the street and crawl up your ass. You made that decision, you made that choice. So you have to be responsible for the results of that. And that's my only big deal with it. Get as much education as you can, make as much an informed decision as you can, but ultimately you carry the responsibility for any consequences that come after that.
Yeah. Yeah, my biggest fear is always, or my biggest irritation isn't the right word, or disappointment isn't the right word either. But the thing that makes me sad, I guess, is when I do see a guy who's like 25, 26, and he says, hey, I've been on for a few years now, but I think I'm going to get over this now. I want to do something different, and I'm going to stop everything and come off the TRT and just go back to natural, And it's like, well, we'll see how that goes,
Yeah. I mean, the reality of this is, and this is fact, this is what I see day in, day out. There isn't probably 2 or 3 days go by where I'm not explaining to someone that they have fucked their natural production and they are TRT dependent for life. And that is a huge shock and a negative thing for them. And some people really struggle coming to terms with that because they never thought it was a consideration in their usage. And that's the reality is, that happens regularly where I'm having to say to people, look, mate, you ain't got an option anymore. This is where you're at. And then what about kids? What about this? There is no guarantees. Yes, you can be fertile on TRT, but you cannot be fertile on TRT as well. And unfortunately, there's no way of predetermining this. All we can do is manage the best we can moving forward.
I tell people that all the time.
At 21, you're not thinking of kids. Yeah. But yeah.
It's a huge issue. I think people go into it expecting it to just be like, oh, I'll just have a little fun, put a little muscle on, and then go back to doing whatever. Whereas in reality, especially if you do consecutive cycles and you're not doing anything for your testicular health, the likelihood of TRT for life creeps up on you, and it will sneak up on you. And some guys are obviously more sensitive to that than others. Some guys are super resistant to the downside. But it's one of those things that I'm really hammering for the younger generation is like, listen, if you're going to do this, I want you to be so serious about it that it's a lifelong commitment. Whereas if you don't want to commit to this stuff, I don't think it's worth it for you. I don't think you should be dabbling around in this for 3-4 years, and then you're like, I want to go do something else, go be a long distance runner or whatever. You really got to look at it like this is it. Like, this is going to be my life. I joke with guys all the time, like, I'm going to be up in that retirement home getting injected by hot nurses. That's my life, man. That's what I want.
You'll be still ordering your own stuff then. They'll have a real simple system. Yeah. UGL, you'll be good. But especially at your age, they're going to have such good technology. You're going to live to like 110, 120. Who knows,
I mean, the other thing as well is, we're just focusing on endocrine system, but there's a whole mental health aspect to this that I don't think is really talked about anywhere as much as it should be. Once you've been assisted, going back to natural is mentally very, very challenging.
It's not fun, Dave.
No, it's not. And there's a reason I don't train anymore, because I can't deal with the fact that my training is so substandard to what it used to be.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be reminded on a daily basis in the gym that I'm shit at it now.
All right.
Yeah, that Superman factor, when you have that mindset of especially first cycle, and it's so fresh in my head because it was only a couple years ago at this point, but feeling, because I had very low testosterone naturally. I was like barely 300s, and that was just enough to not qualify for TRT. So I decided to go my own route on that one. Went from 300 total test to 3,000 total test. Yeah, that's quite the roller coaster. And I can remember all the mood swings of it, but also just the day-to-day confidence. Like, I completely changed as a person. And it's hard not to glorify it online when it's such a positive experience for you. Yeah. But you got to realize that that positivity only stays if you stay on the wagon. You don't get to do one cycle and feel amazing forever. You got to keep taking the drug. You're a little bit dependent on it.
Well, the other aspect is that feel-good factor diminishes with exposure to the drug as well. So by the time you're on cycle 6 or 7, that's not really there to the same degree in any way. Normal now. Yeah. The other aspect is, going from a 5-plate bench for reps to 2 is soul destroying.
Yes. Yes.
But it's the reality of it at the end of the day. There comes a point when you potentially have to back off, and at that result, everything that comes with it. You've just got to learn to accept it and get your head around it. It's as simple as that. But I think it's an area that's not discussed much, is how you cope with the psychological backward motion of both your ability and your physique, because there comes a point when necessity deems you can't cycle anymore. You're just TRT now.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there's a lot of guys that are talking openly about it. Like, Dorian Yates and his whole journey coming off of being the best bodybuilder in the world to now he looks like, kind of average fit dad. And it's completely different. I think what I've taken away from all of these experienced guys and their takes on being top of the top to having to go back to normalcy is that there's seasons in your life, and there's going to be a season where, you're an animal, you're a monster, you're a freak, whatever. And then there's going to have to be a season where it's like, yeah, I derive joy from other things. It's not all about this anymore. And you'll oscillate through all of them. That's why I think a lot of guys will kick down on younger guys for wanting to get on roids. And they're like, oh, you should realize that there's so much more to life. It's like, yeah, there is. But right now, I love the gear. That's my life right now. And so that's what I'm going to do. And then in 20 years, maybe I'm going to love gardening and I'll do that. But, wait until then, man.
Yeah. The hard part though is coming to terms. Like, I agree with you completely with the seasons. The hard part is coming to terms with that, because if you freaking are passionate about it, if you love it, then you're not going to want to give that up, So, and that's where I think we see guys run into a lot of issues. Dave, we've seen guys that are having major health complications, and they're saying, hey, yeah, so I'm going to do this cycle next, and what do you think about this? And it's like, dude, you just need to come off, man.
Yeah, there's the knowing the seasons are coming and the getting through that change. It can be a challenge, but there is a lot of guys that are, I suppose, to just put it in a simple phrase, are flogging a dead horse.
Yeah,
they're still cycling. They're not going forward. They're not getting anywhere, and all they're doing is compounding negative health impacts. It's something that comes with age. Some people get through it, some people don't. It's just how it is. I think sometimes it sounds like me and Scott are a bit bashing on this, and it's not, because I don't think either of us would change what we've been through to be where we are now.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
I would have still pushed it. Even with my knowledge of where I am physically now, I'd have still done exactly the same. I'd have still broke myself over again, because I needed to do it. I needed to be where I was, and I needed to push that hard. So I never stand in judgment. It's more a case of, look, these are all the factors you want to be considering. What you do with that is entirely up to you at the end of the day.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, we've got a bunch of listener questions here. Tanner, as you know, we answer listener questions from our YouTube people every week. And I know you put up a thread as well, so you might have a couple questions popping in. So I'd love to just kind of go back and forth, get some insight from you. I'll share some stuff, and Dave can share some stuff. I had one here, and while we're talking about this, see if you have anything good that popped up too. We'll get to that next then. Hector said, question for the next podcast: tons of Deca and Uncle Dave's videos have gotten deleted. So yeah, we had a bunch of videos that were deleted a while back. Is there a chance that we can rebirth the Deca topic and explain its pros and cons, average cycle of Deca, and best Deca test cycles, so on? I know this is Uncle Dave's favorite compound. I am sure that he will be delighted to give us some teaching.
This is great. It's my least favorite compound.
Me too. I'm right there with you.
Yes. Yes, first.
Yeah. What do you think? If you had to use it, if you had to.
Well, I hope I never use it again. So I'll explain my first experience with it. My coach at the time, someone who I thought was a good coach, this ended up being not so true. For other people, I'm sure he's a good coach. I don't want to smash him entirely, but he decided to put me on testosterone, masteron, and Deca for my second cycle. My first cycle was just test and anavar. Pretty basic stuff. The doses were low. It was like 350 tests, maybe 175 mast, 175 Deca.
Wow. Okay.
And so going into the cycle, was excited, whatever. I'm on a new diet, all that good stuff. Then about probably a month or 2 months in, I started getting this creeping feeling of everything sucked. And I was miserable on a daily basis. I was clinically depressed when I was natural. I actually think it was probably due to my low testosterone, but regardless, I felt almost as bad as that, if not worse. And the only thing that I could really chalk it up to was the Deca. I was, I'm pretty thorough with my blood work and whatnot. I was really trying to control any prolactin, any excess estrogen. Stuff was in range, but neurologically, I was a mess. My little soldier did not work. And it was such awful timing because around the time that I first got on Deca, I had the opportunity to meet a very beautiful girl who is now my girlfriend. But the first time that she and I were going to be intimate, there were some difficulties. Yeah.
Oh, man.
And I associate such a strong negative feeling, probably consecutive of that, to the compound itself. So I was not very pleased with it. But what I will say is that I'm on NPP right now. I've been on for about half a week now. Feels great. So Nandrolone could have some potential, but Deca, not so much for me.
Is this your first time back on it? Back on any Nandrolone since that experience?
I used Mint, and I really liked Mint, but yeah.
Okay.
So it's quite strange with Deca. You go back 10, 15 years, no one ever complained of any mental health issues with Deca. Nobody.
Yeah. I think they were there, but maybe people didn't talk about it, you know?
I think maybe there was also an element of you just push through, which I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I think there was an element of that existing as well.
Yeah.
Is Deca for everybody? Without doubt, no. And one of the conversations I have with clients is about mental health, because if someone's got a history of depression, whether it was low test based or not, I'm going to steer a bit careful around things like Deca. But if you cope with it, I think it's a very good drug as a base mass builder. It's anti-inflammatory, it's joint supportive, it has quite a few little niche nicks. What I have seen, and it's a bit of an odd one, is that people that struggle with Deca at low dose can actually get on with it quite well at high dose.
I've seen that too, yeah.
And I'm sure it's to do with the DHN conversion, and just the point that the DHN levels get so high that they compensate for the fact that they're superseding DHT. So I think there is a total dosage thing in there, but it's like, you know, as a coach, are you willing to experiment with somebody at that level to see if it's going to be a positive result or not? So that's really down to the individual. What I find interesting is that I know it's early days yet with the MPP, but you're good with the MPP, but you weren't with Deca, and yet it's the same compound, just the half-life that's changing. But what has changed is the dosing level as well, and the rate at which it's impacting you. So obviously Deca's a slow build, it's a slow half-life, it's going to compound over time. Total dosage is, even on 175, is going to get a little bit higher, whereas the MPP is much more into your system quicker, so your initial dosing is going to be higher, but then depending on how you go with dosing, it's going to stabilize quite quick. So it'd be interesting to see how that pans out for you on a longer scale. But yeah, you know, everyone quotes Robbie Robinson as the Deca-only cycles, and some people do genuinely. I mean, I always got on with it incredibly well at very high doses as well. But I've had clients that are super sensitive, can't go near it. So, and I've always said the same with anabolics. They're a set of tools, and you pick the right tool for the right job. But in considering the right job, you consider the goal, but you also consider the person. And in the person, you consider the health, and that's physical and mental. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. They look at the drug and go, that's a good drug because so-and-so says so, or that's a drug because it does X, Y, Z, but don't consider fitting that drug into their own personal use, you know, where they are in their personal space. And I think that's where a lot of people fall down. A lot of drug use is governed by what everyone else is doing. And we discussed this, I don't know how many times, about drug usage trends. You know, like UK now, maybe not so much states, it's primo.
Oh, it's here too.
And it's just like, yeah, it's not a bad drug, but I mean, if you're wanting to stick 30, 40 pound of muscle on, the last thing I'm going to be looking at is fucking primo.
Yeah.
It's just not built for it. You're going to end up taking huge amounts in order to get anywhere near where you want to get with it, where there's more efficient drugs. You know, I'd definitely be, if you don't want to go down an Angela, I'd definitely be leaning more into mast. It's going to be a better drug for primo for overall mass building. But end of the day, it's individual choices. But I do like low-end test, high-end Deca. I found it productive in a lot of people. But without doubt, there are those that just cannot cope with it at all.
You know what Scott Stevenson had said, Dave, about the high dose Deca and people finding that they get along better with that than lower dose. And I think this makes sense. He said So, there's only going to be so much aromatization that can happen in your body, right? So Deca itself, if unconverted to DHN, is going to have a much stronger effect, right? So if you continue to increase that dose, eventually you're going to reach a point where you can't make any more DHN, and so that you're getting your ratio of actual nandrolone to DHN, you start getting more, direct Deca impacting you, thus being able to better deal with the side effects. I thought that made sense.
Do you think you could combine something like a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor with nandrolone to make it, with Deca to take it easier at lower doses?
Yeah,
from what I understand, it doesn't work.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh wait. No, you're right. Never mind.
It's a 5-alpha.
Yeah,
it's 5-alpha.
Never mind.
Conversion.
Yeah.
It should.
It just went over my head for a minute. I'm sorry. Carry on.
Yeah, because if it's all about the ratio of DHN to nandrolone, then you could just change the amount of 5-alpha reduction in your body and then get that ratio sooner.
Yeah.
There is the other caveat that it will lower dopamine transport proteins as well, which is a direct action of nandrolone. So that's the nandrolone doing that, not the DHN. So there will still be people that are going to be sensitive to that dopamine impact.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. I mean, generally, what should happen. So like I said, there's always going to be outliers. Whatever way we discuss this, there'll always be people that don't fit in that box.
Yeah.
But what should happen with the downregulation is that it just sort of sucks a little bit of the joy out of life.
Yeah.
Now that's down to you and your personal tolerances as to how copeable you can deal with that. But obviously, you start dropping dopamine, and you're going to start losing the reward that your body is trying to produce for when you do things that you should enjoy. That can just take the shine off for some people, or it can be a little bit stronger. So, though I think that the 5-alpha reductase approach would definitely have some benefit, there will still be those that are going to be sensitive to that dopamine downregulation.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting.
But then again, you can always throw Caber in to offset that as well. So there is ways to manage around that as well.
I'm curious, Dave, how do you feel about Caber's indications in some studies with like heart fibrosis versus Prami as an alternative?
Well, yeah, I mean, sorry. So I tend to default Caber because of availability in the UK.
Yeah.
So it's more a case of that's where I tend to default because Prami's not readily available or has always been historically quite difficult to get hold of.
Right.
But otherwise, I mean, my first protocol would be P5P anyway.
Right.
And if that
exactly.
wasn't doing it, then and I do think Caber is overused. It is a bit of a sledgehammer of a drug, and I do think people tend to overdose it. Prami would be a better choice. It's more of a availability issue, which is why I haven't gone straight to Prami as a choice.
We have a lot more Prami here due to research chems and stuff. It's like way easier to get, and I've seen people do really well with it. And I don't use it often. I really don't use Prami or Caber often. And part of it is that I don't really use a lot of nandrolone either. I think that might be one of the aspects. But when I have used Prami, I found that we can get away with incredibly low doses versus I've heard so many people share just like nightmare stories of it, but I think that they're taking higher amounts.
Yeah, the funniest side effect I hear with Prami is the projectile vomiting. For some reason, my followers will take it and just immediately get nauseous and throw up, and they can't handle it. No idea why that happens. Maybe it's like a solvent or something that some of the research outlets are putting in it to liquefy it. But
I think that's probably more of a preparation delivery problem, as in, what it's suspended in rather than an actual drug problem.
Right. Nasty, I know.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. And if we are providing value to you today, let me encourage you to subscribe and hit the bell. We have several bodybuilding podcasts that come out each week. So, Tanner, did you have anything over there? And I know you put up a thread. I'd be curious to see if we could knock through a couple from your people.
Oh, I do. I actually have someone specifically asking a question for you, Scott.
Oh, shit.
What talk to Scott about his D-ball use, oral/injectable.
Yeah, so I'm off of it right now. Here's the deal. So I really can't use a lot of gear now. At this, I'm kind of in that stage where I should be getting into gardening, instead of pushing it like an animal. That said, Man, a little bit of injectable D-ball pre-workout is freaking amazing. I get the best pumps off of it. It doesn't affect my digestion the way that oral does. But it was maybe 2 weeks ago now. I had gotten my TRT shot together. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to record a podcast with Scott Stevenson in about an hour. After this, I'm going to get a workout in. It's going to be a D-ball day. So I think I put in, like, it was a higher dose, like 25 milligrams. And for me, that's a higher dose. I found that even like 10 milligrams pre-workout injectable is fantastic. I take that and I get the dreaded tren cough. Not tren, obviously, but it began aspirating through my lungs. Every time that freaking happens, it might be an hour later, it might be 3 hours later, I get the most excruciating stomach pain. It's almost like gas pains, but it's like right under right in the solar plexus. It was so freaking awful that we made it the first topic of that episode, and I haven't touched it since, just because, and I really do think that it has something to do with the solvents. The company that I'm getting it through now, I believe that it's the same company that I got it through, the same manufacturer I got it through before, but possibly with a different label on it. It has an extremely strong glycol smell to it. Like, I may or may not keep it in a box that looks like this. And if I were to just take this lid off of said box, you can smell it instantly. And when I've taken it, my wife will actually say, she'll come in my office. She'll say, "Oh, you took some D-ball, didn't you?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, I did 2 hours ago." Or I'll be walking through the house and she'll be like, "You took some D-ball, didn't you?" And I'll say, "Yeah, I did. 10 milligrams." So there's something to do with that solvent that's just not working for me. I would love to figure out, I'd love to make my own, just out of like good pure raw powders, see what I need to do to suspend it. But my deal is man, it just incredible pumps. I freaking love the pumps from it. And I love the fact that it doesn't irritate my digestion other than unless I get, the tren cough from it.
Can we add to this, Scott?
Injectable orals?
What's that?
Have you tried any other injectable orals?
Yeah, I've used, let's see. So I used injectable Anavar way back in the day, like 2012, 14 era. I don't know if that's really even around. And oxymethylone. Oxymethylone was okay. I'm a big fan of Testosterone, like oil-based Testosterone. I love that. In fact, my best ever cycle, the year that I moved up a weight class from middleweight to light heavy, I gained, I think it was 13 pounds. I went from 172 to 194. So I guess, pretty good gain in one season. Stage weight, not just like actual walking around weight, but like literal lean muscle on stage. And that was at like 1.25 grams a test, 800 or 900 EQ, 300 NPP, and then injectable D-ball at 50 milligrams pre-workout and 50 milligrams orally in the morning. That was like my absolute best. Oh, with T&E and injectable D-ball, like 50 and 50, something like that.
Wow, big test derivative guy. Nice.
Yeah, it worked for me, man. Worked for me. And I figured, too, it's something I could control,
Scott's also got a bad habit of taking drugs that are 3 years out of date as well, but he didn't tell you that bit.
Hey, this stuff was brand new, Dave. This stuff was brand new.
He's like, I'm using this. I found it in my drawer. What's date on that? Oh, it's 2019.
Yeah, expired 2019, made in 13, something like that. Hey, yeah, I had a box for a long time of like leftovers from various cycles, but I've cycled through that. Yeah. How about you? You do any of the oral injectables? What's been your experience, Tanner?
I found most recently, and I kind of did this on accident, but injectable Superdrol has had its little roundabout of accessibility lately.
Yeah.
And it's been nice to be able to get more of the benefits of Superdrol without, cooking a client to death because of the liver toxicity.
Yeah.
And I tested it on a few of the influencers that I coach, and one of them blew up to pretty crazy levels of fame. And as a consequence of that, I think he might have artificially increased the popularity of injectable Superdrol. And so I see a lot more places stocking it now. I see a lot more questions in my DMs about it. And I've tried it personally. It's definitely one of my favorite injectable orals. I almost feel like you get the cosmetic look of it within a day or two of using it. It's pretty sharp. But I would love to get my hands on injectable oxymethylone, whenever my coach says I can. And injectable Anavar Gs, I actually still have not seen that. I wonder if it's circulating somewhere out there.
Yeah, the guy I knew was who owned the company that was manufacturing this stuff. He was really excited about it, so I was like, I'll give it a try. I didn't feel like it had the same oomph that you're going to get from like an oxymethylone injectable or a Superdrol injectable or a D-ball injectable even. So it really wasn't my thing. But yeah, all three of those, man, those are great pre-workouts. Now with the way you've run this with the Superdrol, is this an everyday thing, or is this just like pre-workout on special days of the week, or what do you think?
So it would depend. I mean, if they had like a photo shoot coming up or something like that, then it would be every day. I did need to make sure that they're getting that look. We're not skipping any days there. But if it was just like they needed to overload their lifts on a couple days, and I found that they were responding well to the strength benefits of the Superdrol, then just pre-workout shots were doing great. Trying to time it like same time every day, even if it was a rest day, whether or not that's like going to have like a marginal percentage difference over whatever. It's like almost time to go to bed. I'm going to shoot my Superdrol. It's like, I feel like that would probably mess with their sleep, all the central nervous system drive. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, everyone handled it great. I think there's been a couple other clients I've tried since, and they just seem to be a lot more sensitive. So oral Superdrol, it's a no-go. Injectable Superdrol, it's a no-go. But it's all an experimental game there.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of, I'm talking to somebody recently, a lot of the wellness competitors I've heard are moving to Superdrol at the end of their prep. So crazy to see that it's entering, in a strong way in a women's division. I mean, I guess they have a decent amount of muscle. They're not bikini by any means, but to think of Superdrol in someone who's basically like a super jacked bikini girl is beyond my comprehension, I think.
I'd be scared about that. I mean, I know the Winstrol masculinization is already kind of bad enough as it is, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think they're using small doses, but I love it pre-contest. It's been either that or oxymethylone or I used to only go with Halo. Halo was like my thing going into like for that like last week or so, finishing touch. But I think Superdrol has its place, and I think I even might like it better than oxymethylone for that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, you haven't really done many of the injectable orals, have you?
I did. I've done some injectable orals, but unfortunately, I honestly can't remember what it was. Yeah. But I do remember at some point doing an injectable oral. It was in that initial period of me getting into usage from when I was 19 up to 24. I tried all sorts at that point. And I do remember an injectable oral being on the menu, but I just can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
But then I was one that never particularly suffered with stomach issues around oral use anyway. I mean, not for a very long period of time, but I did experiment with 100 mg of oxy and 100 mg of Anavar pre-workout.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. And like I say, my stomach suffered. There was an impact, but it wasn't to the point where I couldn't force through and eat. The pumps from that were just... Well, I stopped it because I couldn't train. The pumps were that bad. It was just insane. I just couldn't move. It was just like the bump element was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I ran that for probably 2-3 weeks. That was it. I've never been a big oral user. I do like oxy.
Yeah.
As has been covered on our show a million times. But I never actually did a large amount of orals. They were something I just didn't, for no real reason. I just didn't bother with them. It wasn't anything particular about it. I just didn't.
Speaking of, I had a question that came up in our feed that I wanted to ask both of you guys about. I asked Victoria, and it's not something she's familiar with either. Newer approach here, I believe. Here's the question. Let's see. You guys are starting to become my favorite bodybuilding themed podcast. Would you guys ever think of discussing oral test in the form of these undecanoate pills that have come out in the last few years? I can't find much information on it. So I did a little bit of digging on this. I think you might pronounce it Jatenzo. And they have this oral 158 milligram test undecanoate that is literally it bypasses the liver. And what did it say here? It is it's basically absorbed through the lymphatic system, which so you don't get any liver stress from it. Have you guys heard anything about this stuff?
I've had followers ask me questions about it. It's not something I've done a deep dive on, but I'll say right now I'm pretty pessimistic about it. It is, the end all be all for every teenager. It's like, wow, I get to hop on tests and not inject, not keep needles in my room. This is awesome.
Yeah.
So if it really does bypass the liver, that's great. But then what is it going to do to the lymphatic system? We don't know from what I gather.
Yeah. And it looks like there's different dosages. Where did I find that?
I don't see how it can bypass the liver for the simple reason as it's going to end up in the bloodstream and it's going to go through the liver at some point. I mean, okay, you may not be talking about the methylated side of the compound, but you're still talking about testosterone itself. So it can't exist in your body without going through the liver at some point. And though injectables are generally not particularly hepatotoxic, there is still a little bit of liver stress that you'll get from injectable drugs. Even if we're talking about this acts like an injectable once it's in the bloodstream, there's still going to be a mild increase in liver enzyme action. It will be very mild, but it is still going to be there.
Kind of like taking a multivitamin, you're still going to get some level of stress.
Yeah, so I don't get how the bump can say it bypasses the liver because it's a biological impossibility.
I think that it bypasses the liver, unlike a methylated drug that's dependent on the liver. You know what I mean? To enter the system. I think that's what they're saying.
So it's going to be interesting as to how. Yeah, it's. I might actually have a look at that. It's intrigued me now.
Yeah, it's a test on decanoate. Like 158 milligrams per pill. And then I saw a whole conversion saying like what they had seen. Like if you would be at like 400 nanograms per deciliter if dosing it this way on average. So there's kind of a chart. But yeah, that was the first thing I thought too, Tanner, is like every teenage kid that wants to be on gear but doesn't want to inject yet,
Yeah, and that's always what they're looking to do. That's why like SARMs are so popular as they are now, is you can keep them in your bedside drawer and it's not as scary as your mom finding a bunch of needles and vials. It's just, oh, look at this. No, Mom, it's a supplement. I swear. My friend's using it, whatever. They get away with it. But in reality, it probably would have been healthier if they were just shooting tests from the get-go.
Yeah. I liked one of the approaches that you took with SARMs, that you had said something along the lines. Here's what he said, Dave, along the lines of, hey, if you are going to use SARMs, then maybe at least have some sort of test production and maybe running like some enclomiphene or something like that along with it, or HCG, so that you are still getting some level of testosterone. I don't think that's a bad idea. I mean, I'm not for a 16-year-old kid, say, running SARMs, but if he were going to do it, one of the reasons I don't want him to do it is I don't want him to mess his, number one, I think he has a lot more that he can learn about training to build the foundation, but number two, I don't want to see him being 18, 19 and having like permanently altered test levels. So something like that could be beneficial. Is that, I assume that's where you're coming from?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a suppression factor that you're trying to avoid.
Yeah, it's avoiding the suppression. At minimum, I mean, I'll see guys that will finish SARM cycles and they allow themselves to be suppressed. Getting their testosterone back after that is way different than guys who didn't allow themselves to hit that 0 point. They still have functional LH, they still have functional FSH.
I think one of the problems is as well is that when you look at SARM development, the original SARMs, so Osterine and Androgen S4, are actually the only SARMs that ever came close to fulfilling the brief they were supposed to get.
Being selective, you mean?
Being selective and being non-suppressive was the original two factors. So it was tissue selective and it was non-suppressive. It's never successfully happened. There's no SARM that actually fills the original brief of the design. Yeah. But Osterine and Androgen were the closest to get there. When you start getting into stuff like YK and Rad 140, I mean, YK's on the back of a steroid backbone anyway. So those compounds are super suppressive. So you will get people with Osterine that will probably get away with it with sensible dosing to a small extent. But when you start moving into the newer SARMs, you like you say, from a suppressive factor, you might as well be on gear for how impacting they're going to be in suppression.
Yeah.
I think because they're legal, people get this impression that they're perfectly safe. You know, I can buy it online. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not regulated. It's not a problem. And it's like way from it. I know UK side, there's been very slow movement towards trying to regulate them a bit more. But they're trying to do it through a route that isn't law changing because of the repercussions with research chemicals and genuine research chemical sales. So what they're trying to do is do it through trading standards law, which is non-criminal effectively. But they have looked to try and move in a direction where they can start to clamp down on SARM sales.
There.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they're super illegal over here.
Are they?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're like in the same category as D-ball now. So there's that.
SARMs?
Yeah,
no,
they're not illegal here?
They're legal for research purposes, but that's how everybody's getting away with it.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
so is a Rimidex.
Right, exactly.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, the legal standpoint in the UK is, as a research chemical, they're legal for sale, but they're not passed for human consumption. But that becomes a trading law rather than a criminality. So it's not drug supply in the sense of supplying a controlled drug, because it's not a controlled drug, it's a research chemical. But if you can be proven that you are selling them to individuals, which most of the peptide sites do, because they'll advertise that they benefit a human in this way or that way or the other way,
right.
then they can be successfully prosecuted under trading standards law. But it becomes non-criminal. And what they're trying to do is, there's actually, believe it or not, there's an organization called the National Food Crime Agency.
Food crime.
And it deals with things like SARMs and these borderline products that don't quite fit in any categories from a legal standpoint. And they're looking to try and enforce, because currently they don't have any enforcement rights as an organization. They rely on other departments to do their enforcement. If they get enforcement authority, they will be going after SARMs massively. The other hot potato they have is DMP. They don't like that either. They're really fucking hot on that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've got pretty firsthand experience because I work really closely with a research chemical company here in the U.S. And they're one of the bigger ones. We're doing, into the 8 figures every year. And it's weird to have such a huge demand for these things. Every individual that's buying this stuff is most likely not buying them for actual research purposes. And so from a legal standpoint, the brand has to flash it everywhere on the website, not for human consumption. It's on every bottle. There's no pictures of buff guys on the website. There's no take this drug and it can increase pumps and increase muscle growth and whatever. You put any of that on a website, you're done for. It's over. But I think what happens with a lot of these research chemical companies is that some kids will order stuff. They'll say that they're 21 or they'll say that they're 18. There's no ID verification on these sites.
Yeah.
They'll get something shipped to their house. Their parents find it. And then they send scathing emails to their lawyers about how can this company get away with this? So then eventually you get enough attention. I feel like it's not sustainable. So it's nice to have some commission from it as my job. But I know long-term, I don't want to be reliant on that kind of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very grey area that I think at some point is going to attract attention. And it will probably come off the back of something going wrong with a kid and the family-driven social impact drive that, this has killed my kid, ruined my kid, done this to my kid. I know there was a big prosecution for a SARM provider in Wales quite a few years back now. And they actually hammered him over cardering.
Oh, really?
Really?
Because of the clinical studies showing the cancer link. Now, obviously, that's very high doses, rat models, and all the rest of it. But that was the big bugbear. This is a drug that, from a clinical research point of view, has produced cancer in pretty much every trial. You're selling that to people.
Yeah.
There was obviously no dissection of dosage and everything else that had gone on, but that was what the the prosecution hooked on. And when it comes to criminality around drug use, you look at social impact and financial impact. And obviously, from a social impact point of view, this was deemed as being very damaging. So as a result, he got a pretty stiff sentence for what he was doing in comparative to previous cases, all because of cartering. So like you said, you start getting people that are getting into a mess, not particularly because of the compound, but because of huge misuse of the compound, then that's going to start driving action towards tighter legislation around it, guaranteed. There is also, I don't know about statesides, but in UK law, there is also some onus on the supplier knowingly providing a product when they know the customer isn't doing what they should do with it.
Yeah, there is in the US.
So there's that avenue that can get a bit sticky for suppliers as well, because it's like, look, you're selling this to this, there's no link to any research in any of these sales. What the hell?
Right. And that's something that the sites now are starting to adapt to, and they're starting to evolve, where before you're able to purchase a product, you have to specify what kind of research you're doing, what type of researcher you are, like what your organization is. And of course, these are just drop-down windows. You could blindly fly through them and click a bunch of boxes, but at least it's one added layer of, let's just say, plausible defense for the people who are selling it. If you look at the actual research chemical companies like Sigma Aldrich, they legitimately sell chemicals to actual researchers. You have to basically write a little essay saying, hey, here's the study I'm doing, here's where I work, here's like my picture of my lab card identification key thing. And then they'll manually approve your application, and then they'll send you the product. But that's impossible for a money machine like the peptide world and research chemical world, and especially SARM world right now.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Dave. I was going to add. I was just going to say I do see a little bit of SARMs, because I can see with the research company that I'm affiliated with, I can see what we're selling or what people are using the code for. And I do see some SARMs, but I think our demographic is more toward the semaglutide, BPC, Arimidex, the general basic ancillaries plus the peptides. So I don't see as much of the SARMs, I think, from our side.
My brand doesn't even sell them.
It doesn't even sell SARMs?
Yeah, none.
Good man. I like the sound of that.
I think, like you say, that layer is basically due diligence. If you can show you've shown due diligence, then you get a lot of, you're saving your ass a bit. At least you've made an effort.
It's at least one of the angles. I wanted to make sure we got through a couple more questions, though, before we ran out of time. Tanner, do you see anything on your side of things that you thought would be fun to bring up? And while you were looking, too, I wanted to mention to you, I think that's a smart move, man. You mentioned, like, hey, it's a good revenue and all of that right now, but it's not something you want to depend on. I will give you old man advice that multiple streams is the route to go, because you never know, as an independent business person, when something's going to get taken away, like when your YouTube channel is going to get deleted. And it's nice to be able to have various different outlets,
Scott lives in fear of that daily.
With Dave on the channel, I do, yes. Strictly because of Dave.
Oh, ticking time bomb on the other end of the table. All right, I got a couple of questions here. So I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but do you know of Proviron being prescribed in Russia to teenagers who have not yet hit pubescence?
Huh.
So they use it as a masculinizing drug that will compensate for insufficient puberty.
Interesting. Huh.
I haven't heard of that specific, but I can see why they would look at it, yes.
Right. So I have a lot of followers that are interested in improving their appearances, a lot of younger guys. They feel like they have baby face. They want to try and use drugs to change that. How would you design a masculinizing stack for someone who wants to look like that caveman, almost super masculine lumberjack look?
We've never gotten this question, Dave.
I wouldn't.
They're asking,
the
like,
honest answer is
how to get old and ugly like us. They're trying, that's like how to get old and ugly. Like, yeah, man, I would say this, that like, just hold on, just wait. Enjoy looking young while you can, because when it's gone, it will be gone. You know what I mean?
I appreciate the desire and what people want to do. For me personally, I wouldn't get involved.
Yeah.
To me, that's just, I feel that's a step that, like I said earlier, I don't judge anyone, it's their own personal choice. But my own personal choice on that is I don't want to be advising you on doing anything like that.
Well, here's the thought, Dave. If you're 20, let's say you're 16, and now you use enough androgen, say for instance, and now you look 25. When you're 25, you're going to look like you're 40, and when you're 40, you're going to look like you're 70. That's why I wouldn't want to get behind that. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, if you want any evidence of anabolics making you look older as fuck, just look at my face.
Dave's actually 32, guys. Dave's 32 years old.
But no, we live in this instant world. We live in this world where we want change immediately, and there is ways we can facilitate that. And I completely accept that and understand that. That doesn't mean it's always right or the best choice. Now, you're free as an individual to do what the effing hell you want, and I don't stand in judgment of that in any way, but I wouldn't be comfortable getting involved in that side of things.
What if we flip the question? What if someone was asking, how do I look as young as possible? What drugs can I take to accomplish that?
Again, I would be more of the look, you're always going to fight a losing battle. Yes, GH is going to have some cellular recovery and cellular rejuvenation effects. It's going to help. Genetics plays a huge role in it. Diet, toxins, exposure, all those play a huge role in it. If you want to stay young, no alcohol, no smoking. Don't be in those sort of environments. Minimize chemical exposure. But ultimately, you cannot reverse the aging process, and you're not going to stop it. So you're creating, not as in, the individual that wants to do this is creating a little bit of an issue in the sense that it's going to be a problem they can never fully solve.
Yeah, but you can. I don't see there being a problem trying to work toward it. Collagen, for instance. My mom had very, very low protein intake. So when I started her on the True Nutrition hydrolyzed beef collagen, guys, use code THINK over there, she literally reversed aged. She started looking, like, I saw it, her friend saw it, people at her aerobics class saw it. She had people in the grocery store saying, "Excuse me, what's your beauty protocol?" Because she wasn't getting enough protein in. Her collagen intake was really low. Her skin and hair literally got revitalized, so it was a very strong effect for her. I don't see there being a problem in something like that, or advice like, hey, what about watch, like you said, environmental stuff? How about your skin? Take real good care of your skin. There's a company, I forget the company that I use, Origins, makes a really good gentle cleanser. And I wish I would have started using it like 20 years sooner, and then a moisturizer with that. Things like that are going to be, great advice. It's not like cutting edge, like take growth hormone kind of conversation, but it is definitely going to be helpful. Use a UV blocking moisturizer on your face before you go outside and avoid too much or sun exposure. You know what I'm saying? I don't think any of that's bad, is it, Dave?
No, I don't. I mean, there's being healthy. But where is that line? And I honestly don't know the answer to this. Where is that line where our supplementation starts to become potentially unhealthy?
Yeah.
And I don't know where that line is. It's like, GH, is that a step too far? Or is that all right? MNN, is that a step too far? Or is that okay? And I think it's a personal thing. But by all means, we want to be as healthy as we can, and it's a good thing to be health conscious, unless it's getting to the point where it's creating health anxiety, and then you're sort of like, well, yeah, you're physically better, but mentally you're destroying yourself. Where do we go with it? And I don't know the answers to this conversation. I genuinely don't. What there is, I don't think there is any right or wrong, but again, it's like anything else. It's education and informed decisions as to how far you want to go. I mean, we can take anyone who trains and use anabolics, and I'm sure with the right panel of information, we can improve their training and diet without changing anabolics and get them better progress. Is that realistic? Probably not. You know, we've all compensated for our diet and training through anabolics. We've all done it. We will always continue to do it, and people will. And it's the same with this sort of stuff. Could I live a lifestyle that's going to allow me to look healthier for younger and be healthier for longer? Damn right. Do I do it? Do I bollocks? That's why I'm the state I am. But I accept my effort to consequence reaction there as well. So it is a difficult one. Where, how far should somebody go? And I honestly don't know the answers there. I really don't. But I personally, like I say, a lot of it's around age and consent of the individual. What I wanted at 16, 17, and 18 is worlds apart from what I want at 53.
Right.
You know?
I think the way that I'd approach the topic is basically like, you know, the way you talk about enhancements as tools, like lay out the full toolbox in front of someone and say, hey, this is what all of these things do. Which ones do you feel like are right for this job? And then they'll make their decisions. Like, for example, someone who's a hypochondriac about getting cancer, they better not touch growth hormone. They have no business doing that. But for other people, yeah, they totally could do that. I know Sylvester Stallone is quite the fan of growth hormone, and it's probably a reason he has this unusual youth about him. And aging, it is, you know, you're fighting an uphill battle, but at least you're fighting it, I think, is the idea behind anti-aging, as opposed to just like, well, I'm never going to look ageless and 21 forever. Yeah, of course not. But, you know, we can slow things down. It's all risk mitigation, wrinkle mitigation.
It is, and I think with the aging thing, at least you have maturity and a knowledge of yourself on your side, as in the preventive of aging, where when it comes to premature aging or speeding up the aging process because you want to look mature, the problem there is I don't think you have the maturity on your side to be fully grasping the concept of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And you know, not yourself bandy. Whatever you want to do is whatever you want to do. And like you say, you know, GH for some people, I know someone just down the road who massively accelerated stomach cancer because he used GH. I know someone that's used it for 15 years plus and looks incredible.
How would you, Tanner, with the younger guys who are saying that they want to look older? I'll say this, first of all. I think if you get absolutely peeled, you're going to get rid of some of that, you know, that baby fat on your face. It's not a permanent thing, but get in better shape would probably be one thing that would help for some people, unless you're, say, Jay Cutler. But how would you approach that, you know, handling a question like that from, say, a 16-year-old kid?
Yeah, so the way it came to me, and I have a guy, he's 20, so he's already of age to be making relatively informed decisions.
Yeah.
He was using, I think, 150, 200 milligrams of Proviron every day and wanted to see what would happen to his body. He was really optimistic about the androgenic side of things there. He got some, what he says is strong facial change. Of course, could that be associated with the fact that it's a 20-year-old that is maturing? Maybe. But he said that his eyelids changed, the way that his eyes sat in his head changed, his jawline got more pronounced. His brow ridge, where his eyebrows sit, was more protruding. So he did start making changes towards that, you know, masculinized, androgenic caveman type of look.
Right.
But as far as what I would actually give to someone, I've never prescribed anything like this before. And it's for the same reasons that you guys are talking about. I think it's a game of impatience where, you know, at a certain point, if you're 30 and you still could pass as a teenager, maybe something went wrong during your puberty. If I could understand doing some experimentation, but of course that's your own choice. I had that situation for myself. I mean, I had 300 tests all throughout puberty, all throughout until I was like 21, 22. I could never even grow a smidge of facial hair. And then, you know, I've been on testosterone for about over a year now, and now I have this. So that's a lot better than the, you know, couple pedo stash, whatever stuff I had going on beforehand. It definitely makes a difference. And I think the topic of gear aging is now getting a lot more popular. If you guys have seen the Trend Twins, those guys that are floating around YouTube, they've been on cycle for a good while. They did their first prep, and they basically went from looking like they were like 20s, young studs, whatever. And now they joke that the comments are like, yo, you look like a 36-year-old divorced dad or something now. Completely changed.
Yeah, I could see that. I hadn't watched their stuff. I had heard of them. I recently watched a couple of their videos. And they do. I could see them maybe 32 if you asked me, but I know that they're younger.
Very young, yeah.
Contest prep, man. Contest prep will freaking age you. I don't know what it was for me, whether it was, I think it was a combination between the androgens, between T3. I feel like T3 and stims will really age you. And I feel like tanning. I did a lot of tanning just because it was at the gym. I wanted to get my skin darker for the show. And man, I did a lot of tanning. It's
yeah, but I don't think your look reflects your age. I think you look young for your age. Because when you actually mention your age, it always surprises me because you're older than I think you are when I look at you.
I'm 57, Tanner. Would you believe that?
Wow. What a stud.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Man, it sounds like you get a lot of fun questions, though, from your people. And they are different. We have never been asked that question, Dave.
Yeah, it's an odd one. But then, like you say, it's that demographic, isn't it? It's when you're at that younger end of audience that they have... We all wanted, at 16, I wanted to be 21. I wanted to be doing this. I wanted to be doing that. Yeah. At 21, I wanted to be 25. And then you start getting to 30 and start going, no, I want to be 21 again.
Yeah. And I think some of the younger demographic, they do have, like, we all have our insecurities, but I think that maybe we come to terms with some of those things. Talking to another influencer, he had told me of people reaching out looking for like penis enhancement, like looking for enlargements and stuff like that. Do you get questions along those lines too?
Yeah, I mean, I tell people it's not something I deal with because I just don't want to be involved in that whole, I guess, like body dysmorphia aspect. Yeah. If anything, I'm going to tell people like, dude, it's fine. If a girl really takes issue with that, I mean, unless it's like severe, like there was something that went wrong during your development. Yeah. But dude, you're fine. I mean, if a girl's really going to judge you for that, she's not the one. You'll figure it out, man.
Yeah, that's what I've appreciated about your advice too, is that I feel like you're coming from, here's my thing, man. There's a lot of people that they develop a following and they just, they don't respect the power that can come with that,
There's a responsibility.
It really is. And you can just throw something out there and people will genuinely listen to you and take that advice. And, you gotta kind of think about it. So, I mean, even what we talk about on the podcast is going to always be a little bit different than if it's going to be one-on-one and I'm working with somebody, directly in a specific situation. And I'm always going to try to err on the side of caution publicly because I don't know who's listening. And it could be, an 18-year-old kid who's never done anything before. I don't want him to be using the same compounds that a more advanced guy who's done 20 cycles has done because it could hurt him,
Right. I just remember what it was like to be their age and to be looking at the enhancement world with wide eyes, wondering what all of this stuff is. Like, I want to try that. I want to try this. Not really understanding what it's going to do to my health or long term, what effects it's going to have on me. And that's the way that I want to approach it. I think a lot of guys, they talk down on younger guys because they don't have that connection to what it felt like to be a teenager, to be reckless, to want to just do drugs. I mean, I made a recent post about it where it was like, if you're a young 20-year-old and you've never done a drug in your life, you're in the minority. That's like what teenagers and young 20-somethings do. And whether it's going to be anabolics or, God forbid, other more dangerous things, that's what happens where everyone's drinking and smoking and doing this and doing that and whatever. They live reckless lifestyles. But the least I can do is basically tell them, if you're going to ride your motorcycle 150 miles an hour, wear a helmet.
Yeah,
that's where I come in.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. I think a thing with the older guys as well, though, is that we've seen the byproduct of that because we've lived that a little bit longer.
Yeah,
and so it becomes down to that. It's not that we don't want to give the advice; it's that we're very conscious of what we're putting ourselves forward to be giving in the term of advice. So yeah, as you get older, you tend to get a little bit more cautious about the information you give people because you've seen more of what could go wrong. It's like when you're a kid, you climb a tree, you don't think about it. Climb a tree when you're 25, and all you're thinking, if I fall off here, I'll break a hip. I mean, I think about that stepping off the curb now. But I think the more you live, that you tend to get a little bit more cautious of what's going out.
Throw one more at us. I'm really curious now. I'd love to hear one more of the questions that your guys came up with.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the other ones might be more on the dosing side of things, which is fine. We have some questions about Deca, but I think our tangent on that answered it just fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting question. Will semaglutide make your hair fall out?
Huh.
Not that I'm aware of. Ow. Actually, yes, potentially. So, we've discussed this a couple of times. One of the big risks with Sema is that people don't adjust their nutritional intake for the fact that their calories are going to be severely reduced. I have seen deterioration, particularly in females, of nail and hair quality because their calorie intake is so restricted, but they've not changed their food choices. So they've moved to Sema because they don't have the willpower to diet correctly. That's fine. It's a tool. Use it as you will. But the problem is they're still eating junk food, just small amounts of it. So now they're malnourished. And this can then reflect in hair, skin, and nails, particularly females. Females are much more sensitive to that than males. So yes, I have seen deterioration in hair and nail and skin quality with the use of it, but it's not a direct impact from the drug. It's a secondary action because the diet choices haven't adapted to ensure that they're getting the right nutrition they need when their calorie intake is now much more restricted.
Skip saw someone who had higher thyroid output, higher T3 as a result. And talking with Victoria, it may have been that basically by getting kind of like some PCOS factors in order, that put him into a position where thyroid production could be higher. And you may be more sensitive to a dose of thyroid. So I'm just thinking outside of the box here that high thyroid could cause more hair loss. But once again, that's not like a direct action of semaglutide. Do you have anything on this one, Tanner?
No, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, I mean, people don't realize that, you stop eating as much, you're obviously going to start running out of the micronutrients. Overall calorie load is down. Overall micronutrient load is down. You'll start losing hair, all that nasty stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen it in bloods. I've seen people with anemia in bloods and stuff because it's using Sema. And when I discussed the results with them, they've come back and said, well, yeah, I have a slice of toast for breakfast and then I have this and then I have that. And it's like, well, there's just no nutrition there. You're having a Mars bar for your lunch, for God's sake. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Dave, should we be taking any more submissions at this point, or are we cutting that off? I know you were gone for like 2 weeks for our contest.
Oh, I'm sorry I went on holiday, for God's sake.
You look like you got a tan.
I did. It was 40 degrees every day. It nearly killed me.
That was like over 100. It's like over 100.
I'm too fat for that sport to eat, man. I just really am.
Dave sent me this picture of the beach here. Well, not the beach, but
look
the
at that.
ocean. Hey, look at the sky. It's just bright blue. 100 degrees plus, though. I don't want that.
10 days, I saw clouds once.
Really?
And that was when we hired the speedboat and went around the island.
Did you eat any good food while you're there? Any good Greek food?
Yeah, it's some nice food. The hotel food was okay.
Yeah.
They had 3 restaurants in it, so 2 of the restaurants were a bit mundane, but one restaurant was particularly nice, but you had to book and it was difficult to get into. So we did eat out for the sort of second half of the holiday quite a bit, but no, it was. I couldn't fault the weather. It was stunning. I couldn't fault the scenery. I couldn't fault the people. Really, really nice people. Really, genuinely friendly. It was one of the places where I've been on holiday that was obviously very touristy driven. That I didn't feel like they were just trying to be nice to get money out of my pocket.
Yeah,
it's like they genuinely were nice, it was quite mad. We went out on a speedboat up to this shipwreck place, and we pulled out the shipwreck place, and there was like a £50 million super yacht parked outside, and it was really weird seeing this real mix of very high-end luxury and then just everyday people.
Yeah.
Some of the yachts outside the marina. I mean, there's a ferry that goes from Zante to the main island, and there were yachts coming in that were bigger than the bloody ferry. You know what I mean?
Really?
It's just like, Jesus Christ.
That'll be Tanner one day. He got his education started early, and you're going to be able to retire by the time you're our ages.
Oh, Dude, if I have the money to buy a yacht like that, I'm going to put it into funding a steroid study. I don't care for a giant yacht. We need more info, dude. There's so many questions we still have. Is Equipoise actually kidney toxic? Who knows?
Yeah. We got that one today, as a matter of fact, too. That was on our list
really?
of things
Nice.
we didn't cover.
What do we take away from the chicken studies so far? Do you think it's toxic or not?
There's definitely a secondary action. Whether there's a primary action, I don't know, but there's definitely a secondary action.
Yeah, I could say that was my number one compound, and I'm only one person, obviously, so I would never say like because of that. But I can say in my personal experience and the people that I've worked with. I mean, as a full-time coach, you know, imagine how many people you could work with if you're doing it full-time, guys. In over a literal decade of doing that full-time, you've seen a lot of people who've used EQ, and we watch labs, and it's not something that I've seen ever, honestly, personally. So I'll add that.
No, I don't think there's a direct action. The only compound I'm aware of having a direct action to kidneys is tren.
Yeah. Yep.
No, and Tren, quite a few case studies of tren on AKI, but other than that, I've not seen anything direct from any of it. It's always been secondary.
Was there something with Anavar too? Did Victoria say that once?
I'm not sure. It's not. I've not seen it.
I haven't seen it firsthand. You know.
I mean, I love EQ. It's been interesting because I think a lot of people in the educator space, they take a very anti-EQ stance.
Really?
Just because if they're going purely off of the studies, I think that it's easy to conclude that. But, you know, were the chickens taking telmisartan? Like, you know, I don't really know about that. It's the secondary action that Dave's talking about. I think, you know, the thicker your blood is, obviously your kidneys as a filter, you're going to blow it out if you keep that thick blood for long enough.
Yeah. So are you going to do any contests, anything like that? Are you thinking about competing at any point?
Yeah, so coach has me about 4 years out of heavyweight. And so I'd love to get into that division if obviously you can put enough size on me. That's, you know, we're looking at something like 40 pounds in 4 years, but if I can do it, that'll be fun.
That'd be cool. You got a little ways to go then. You got some time.
Yeah, quite some time, but it's good. It gives me the time to really get into the habit of things and just build that foundation.
Yeah.
Stop messing around. Up the dose. Get it done in a year. What are you playing at?
Oh, I don't think I can up the dose that much more anymore.
What are we talking? Where are you at right now?
Yeah, so I just got my new cycle design. That's why I was mentioning I got on NPP recently. So it is a gram a test, testosterone propionate on top of that. That's sitting at 300 per week, 600 primo, and 350 NPP. I'm doing 10 IUs of growth hormone.
You got a lot of room.
Micrograms IGF-1. Yeah.
Oh, you double that.
A lot of room.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
How are you liking the IGF?
I like it for pumps. I feel really full in the gym. It feels like my muscles are like swollen. It's awesome.
How are you dosing it? Pre-workout or what?
So it's LR3. I honestly, I mean, I look at the active life of it. It feels like it kind of doesn't matter when I take it in the day. But my coach has me taking it after my workouts, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I've done that. I've done it both ways. And like you're saying, I really didn't notice too much of a difference either way, but I definitely love the pumps from it. And 10 IUs. You using any insulin yet then?
No, my blood glucose is pretty well controlled. But I think coach is also just pushing me a little bit on the generic for a while. And he's like, I want to see you earn the pharma stuff. And then, you know, eventually I'll go up. The sources in the US are limited. A lot of the pharma sources are like some dude had his AIDS and is just selling his kits to people. So there's a limited supply of that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us, man. If people want to follow you on Instagram, I'm going to put the link down below. But what is your Instagram name?
Instagram is tanner.tattered. You can find all of the other links to all of my other resources, social media, etc. in the super link in my Instagram bio. And my FAQ if you have any questions that you might want to ask me.
We'll start referring people to the FAQ, Dave. That's what we'll do.
Yeah,
go to Tanner's FAQ. It'll explain it all.
It's actually funny. I've had the Think Big Bodybuilding podcast in my FAQ. It's one of the resources that I push people towards. I've been recommending you guys for a while. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, man. And I've seen you mention us a couple times in some of your videos. I really appreciate that very much, man. And I'm grateful that you are helping to connect us to some of the newer guys. It means a lot because at the end of the day, man, Dave and I, we genuinely do want to help people. I want to see people make the best progress they can, have the best experience with bodybuilding that they can, and have it better their life versus having them walking away feeling like, man, I wish I didn't do that, you know?
it's a team effort, man. We're all in it together. I don't agree with the whole like competing against other educators mindset. It's weird.
Yeah, I agree with that. Dave, anything you want to leave us with? Oh, Dave, you need to give us. So, Tanner, we get Uncle Dave's advice at the end of every episode. And Dave never comes up with, sometimes he'll write one down, but most of the time he makes it up at the very end, and he tells us to keep swimming. Keep swimming. I know.
Keep swimming. Definitely keep swimming. I had a really good one, and I lost it.
Of course you did. Where did you write this one down, Dave?
I did, and I lost my notebook on holiday.
Why didn't you put it on your phone? Like, make a note on your phone.
I can't use technology.
Okay, well, make one up for us. We need to be simple, like brush your teeth every night before bed, you know?
Right. For the young guys. Something for the young guys.
Yeah.
I have actually adopted a little bit of a new mantra. So I have a mantra which is just keep swimming from, say, Finding Nemo. But I do agree that you just got to keep moving forward. You just got to keep moving. It might be small steps, but you keep moving forward, you'll get there. But I have a new mantra. I don't want to get into too long because I know time's short and everything else. So prior to going on holiday, getting a bit stressed, felt a bit overwhelmed with work, everything was getting a bit much. Holiday didn't really cure that too much, helped a little bit.
Because you worked the whole time, there's that.
No, well, I worked the first week, which was a bit of a ball ache. But anyway, I've come back, and I don't know why I've picked this up. I don't know where it's come from, and I don't know why I'm saying it to myself. But I basically have developed this mantra of that I can achieve anything I want. I just need to do it. So I've started with this sort of mantra in the back of my head, and I'm repeating it to me surprisingly quite a lot. And I don't know why I'm doing it or what's caused me to do it, but just that everything is in my control. I just need to do it. And that's it, really. So yeah, I mean, I just feel that I am in complete control of my destiny. And yes, there's going to be hiccups. Yes, there's going to be fuck ups. Yes, there's going to be a day I want to kill the world. But ultimately, I am in the position I'm in because I've put myself in this position, and I can move this from this position in any direction I want. I just need to do it. And I think probably a lot of us limit ourselves because we think I can't do X, Y, Z, or I can't do this. It's like, well, you can do anything you want. It starts with a step, and you just got to move forward with it. So it's a little bit of keep swimming, but yeah, I don't know why, but I've just got this mantra of I can achieve anything I want to achieve. I just need to do it.
I like that. That's good. Good. A little food for thought. Hope everybody enjoys that. I want everybody else to meditate on that one. Guys, I know that you didn't get a lot of your questions answered this week, but we are getting back to normal now that Dave is back. So we'll be back next week. Please leave us your questions in the comments, and we'll be happy to tackle them next week. Patreon, I think you guys have a few questions there. We'll be sure to tackle those. Check out Tanner over at Instagram. You can follow the super link to everything else. Check out his FAQ if you have any questions about PEDs. And Tanner, we appreciate you taking the time, man, to hang out with us. This was a lot of fun to get to meet you finally.
Oh, it's been a blast. You guys are great. Thank you so much.
Guys, well, I am Scott's shit.
Oh, I'm only talking to one of you when I say that, obviously.
Come on, guys. He didn't say which one, Dave. He didn't say which
That's
one.
Right. I didn't say it.
Guys, for another episode.
Obvious.
For another episode of Drugs and Stuff with Dave Crosland, check out Crosland's. No, don't go there. You can go to evalbloodanalysis.com, get your labs done. But with Dave, TrueNutrition.com, use our code ThinkSupplementSource.ca for Canadians. And guys, we'll tackle your Patreon questions next time. Tanner, thanks for being with us, man.
It's been a blast.
Thank you.